The Dry Hooch mission, helping veterans and their families who survived the war, survive the peace.
Dry Hooch is a place where veterans can gather informally in a coffee house, a safe, comfortable, drug, and alcohol-free environment. Dry Hooch is a nonprofit organization formed by combat veterans to help veterans in their return home.
If you would like to know more about our nonprofit organization or to make a donation and make a difference in a veteran's life, please visit www.dryhooch.org.
State Fair Park. My dad was a Milwaukee police officer, so that colored my life quite well.
How long was he a cop?
Over 30 years.
Wow.
But he went into dispatching after a while due to conflicts with people out in the community.
So just make sure that you're maintaining that distance away from the mic, or else I can't hear you when you get from that point. Unless, I turn the voice volume way up. Here, go ahead, talk.
Hello?
Okay, you hear yourself clear now? Mm-hmm. All right, so your father was a cop. So what was it like growing up in the household with a cop as a father?
Well, my experience was not good. He brought his anger home. He was a rager. I was terrified of him my whole life growing up.
Yeah.
And even after I was grown up. So that unfortunately also colored my choices as far as men goes.
Okay, so...
He was also in the Marine Reserves, partially served as a drill sergeant, so that helped a lot.
Oh, okay, yep.
And not the kind of person who would, make you stand up straight or, bounce a quarter on your bread and make sure it came out nice, but...
Basic training style.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Breaking you down. So, at least for me, there was never any building back up, so just the breaking down part. At least he didn't beat me up like they used to do back then.
Yeah, so what were your other interactions with veterans growing up?
I didn't really have much of anything else. My ex-husband attempted to join the Army Reserves also, but it turned out to be quite funny. He ended up getting a medical discharge. I remember him calling me as he was going through boot camp and crying that he wanted to come home. But he was having issues with his feet and his legs, basically having stress fractures and stuff, so he was let out. That was really about it until I met my second husband. Was it 96, I think it was. I just yesterday went through, it was 17th anniversary of his suicide. So he was in the Navy on a nuclear submarine. He told me he was also a Navy SEAL. That was one of the things that he had problems with, was missions that they went on and things that happened on those missions that never left him.
Yeah, so did he talk in depth or just not go into detail? Was this when he was drinking, when he was sober?
And wasn't he drinking? More so when he was drinking, yeah. He would talk about his time on the submarine. He loved that. Unfortunately, he told them that he was on drugs, which he knew would get him a discharge right away. He wasn't on drugs. At the very least, he didn't do drugs. He was an alcoholic, but he didn't do drugs.
And how old were you at the time when you guys met? And did you meet him when he was in the middle of active service?
No, he had been out. I can't remember for how long. He was out at least a couple of years, if not a little longer than that when I met him. He had just started school. The sad part is he was a very intelligent person. He got an industrial engineering degree at METC and then a 4-year degree at MSOE for manufacturing engineering, something like that. You know, one of those people never really had to study, you know.
So with the
degree.
mic, try to get it pointed. Go ahead and adjust it until it's pointed like right at your mouth.
Better?
You can even move it towards you so you don't so awkward. So he'd gotten an engineering degree, and that was after his service?
Yes.
Or while you okay.
While we were going out, he was going to school. And unfortunately, you would think his resume being, you know, nuclear sub, nuclear A school, the whole spiel with that, and, you know, being on the honor roll and Phi Theta something or other. And unfortunately, nobody wanted to hire him because this would mean they'd have to pay him a lot of money. And nobody wanted to do that.
Yeah.
So he had a hard time getting a job, and the place he ended up getting a job at was interesting. I mean, just kind of like what they would call a job shop, manufacturing, you know, parts for this company and that company. He did help them get into, what is the big quality assurance organization, ISO. He helped the company get into ISO and get them all set up, which was a pretty big spiel back then. Unfortunately, his boss, and it actually got me a job working in the office with them, was also an alcoholic. So that was a lot of fun. I somehow became responsible for both of them. Yeah.
Not good. So how did your father and Len get along?
Okay, for the most part. I mean, being that they were both in the military, that helped a lot. The Marines and the Navy always have their little, what do you call it?
Measuring contest.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
That would be a good way to put it. But it was always in teasing. And so along those lines, you know, they got along okay. Len was a little more, I don't know, the way he talked and some of his beliefs and whatnot were a little bit beyond what my dad was comfortable with, I guess you could say. I have to say, at the very least, at this point, my dad, being older, getting older, he eventually started to mellow out. Wasn't as big of an asshole as he used to be. So that helped. And I don't know if it's the best way to put it, but he was tolerant of Len, you know, understanding his issues, and he'd gone through some things, so they were tolerant of him.
Did Len ever seek treatment?
No. He refused.
Not even a psychiatrist. And he
No,
was
no.
dishonorably discharged, so he did
Dishonorably discharged, as well as pretty close after that, he also attempted to commit suicide. And given his previous status, being in the SEALs and whatnot, now this is all what he told me. He at the time was staying with friends, husband and wife, and they had a daughter, and I think she watched other kids, and he chose to do this while he was with her in their apartment with these kids. And I believe the place was surrounded by all kinds of law enforcement. And I guess the only thing that stopped him from committing suicide was that he passed out. So.
Did he ever have anything on his record?
I'm not sure. I don't, as far as while he was still in or after.
Well, before his service and then after his service.
I believe he had some kind of incident while he was on the sub. I don't remember what it was. I know he had gotten knocked down a grade. I don't think it was something he was really worried about. That was never his goal to be, to work his way up and all that. He had a lot of stories from when he was on the sub, and from what I understand, there's actually one of the men he was on the sub with, one of the higher-ups, had actually written a story that was online. His dad found it online after Len did die. The guy the person who was, I'm sorry, I don't remember all the terms of, the official rankings and whatnot of.
That's fine. It's meant to tell it the way that you want to tell it.
But the person who was in charge of the sub, apparently, as usual, they were grooming him for, bigger things and didn't know what he was doing, as it usually goes. And one incident with them was that they had, the guy had taken them where they had gone down so low that they almost didn't come back up.
Yeah.
So almost killing everybody. And this man that wrote this story that's apparently online, he had been in the military for in the Navy for 40-some years, on subs, and he quit after that.
Damn.
There was also another incident where, obviously, when they were in dock or, going in, that, I don't know what it is, but there's the big, tall, I don't know if it's like a radar thing, but it caught the tow line of a tug ship or a tugboat and pulled them down and killed the guys that were on there.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, he had some stuff from there, too, that, just wasn't, good.
Yeah.
And he had found out that he was being reassigned, or that they were being reassigned to Hawaii, and he didn't want to go for personal reasons. And that's when he decided to say that he was on drugs, so he knew he could get out right away and not have to go. And this was, like I said, then once he got out, he tried to commit suicide. And he ended up in the military hospital. And
So before you were married, did you know about this attempt that he...
yeah, I did.
Okay.
I never got the feeling that he was ever really in that place.
Mm-hmm.
He had his times where, and again, when he was drinking really hard, that he would start thinking about these things that happened, and he'd get really down, and, sometimes it would coincide with something that might have been going on with his job. And so he would, bring up the fact that, being in the military and whatnot, his training, that he wasn't afraid of dying. Not that he didn't think about suicide, but I never got the feeling that he was ever in a place where he'd really follow up on it. When that time came, he had lost his job where he had been working since he got out of school, and again had a very hard time finding a job because of all of his qualifications, and nobody wanted to hire him because of that. And so he had gotten a job at one, really rinky-dink place. I don't remember why, but he lost that job like 6 months later. Got another job, and he had literally just started that job. I don't even remember how long he was there. A matter of months. And it had always been an issue for us, of course, drinking. And if he had gone out drinking on his own, I was always terrified of him coming home driving. And I always told him, I don't care what, I might be pissed, but I'm going to pick you up. And technically after we got married, which is another story, but technically after we got married, he really didn't go out anymore.
So let's take a small break, and then we'll continue,
Okay.
once you guys had gotten married. So we were continuing to kind of a little overview of everything, and now we're going into what it was like with your married life. with Lynn, who was a veteran.
Where would you like me to start with that?
Let's see.
Well, let's start with this. You had asked if he would ever talk to a psychiatrist or anybody, and I had said no, he refused. After going through what he did after he tried to commit suicide in the military hospital, he absolutely refused to talk to anyone.
Try to have the mic a little bit closer.
When the time came around when we decided to get married, because the first time he asked, he was drunk. There's a big surprise. So I made him re-ask me when he was sober. Not that it mattered. But I'm Catholic, so of course I wanted to get married in the Catholic Church. And you go through some counseling, I guess you'd say, through the church before you get married. Everybody does. But because he wasn't Catholic, we also talked to a priest who was basically a family friend. Really, really awesome priest. I mean, just one of those people you could just sit and listen to because he was just so
You knew he was genuine.
enigmatic. Yes, he's actually the archbishop in another state now of a diocese. Anyway, Len loved talking to him. This was the only person Len would talk to. And things were going so well by the time we got married. I was stupid enough to think that, wow, maybe things were actually going on a good track. I mean, he wasn't drinking. Of course, he was the person you think he's supposed to be when you're not drinking. All rainbows and all that crap. So the wedding day came. Memories of his mother, which is a big reason why he's so fucked up. She was a psycho. You looked up psycho bitch from hell, her picture would be there. Anyway, he got drunk at the reception. Wow. So, end of the night, here I am trying to stuff myself behind the steering wheel of my car in my wedding dress. And he's drunk, so I had to drive us home. Big wedding night, all that exciting stuff. And things were still okay. About a month and a half in, blammo, he just gets wasted. And he comes down one day, he's wasted, and he's just railing into me. And I had 2 kids at the time.
Like yelling or physical or?
No, yelling.
Okay.
Just yelling. Pissed off about, I couldn't even tell you what. He just pissed off about everything. And blaming it on me and the kids. It was all our fault. And well, that was the end of that. He decided we were going to go on a honeymoon. He decided we were going to go to San Diego, which was his utopia from when he was in the Navy. San Diego was like the place. So that was our so-called honeymoon, him reminiscing about those times and being drunk, which terrified me because here I am in a completely other state, all by myself with him. And I'm just terrified he's going to do something stupid and get arrested or something. And luckily it didn't get that far, but so yeah, and that was the end of all the good times, and things just went right back to normal. And while we were going out, there was more than one occasion where I found out he was seeing somebody else and everything. And actually, that's what happened before we started seeing the priest. Before we got married, was I found out he was messing around with somebody, and I mean, we had stuff down, money down for deposits for wedding and stuff and all that. We had actually just bought a house also, almost a year to the day to our wedding. We had bought a house.
So kind of like destructive.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So we, And I told him right then and there, I said, I don't give a fuck if, we got this house. I said, I don't care about the wedding. I said, you don't change now. I said, it's done. I don't care. And so that's when we started seeing the priest, and things just really just went 180. So I thought things are good. So now a month and a half after the wedding, right back to where it was. He went on a business trip, and I found out that I think he was seeing somebody he knew through the job, where he was going to see on this business trip that something was going on while he was there. And, all the typical signs, I'm trying to get a hold of him. His phone is off. I talked to him, and he's all pissy with me. And, women know how that goes. And they blame everything on you. And so anyway, like I said, that was the end of that. And things just went back to the way they always were. And as I said, at the very least, he wasn't going out and drinking anymore. He just kept it to home. And then, we were married at the beginning of September. Pretty sure it was in January, the following January. Our bedroom was across from his computer room. And I woke up, I think it was like 6 a.m, and I could hear him talking to somebody. And I go in the room, and he's got a microphone hooked up to his computer, and he's talking to some woman. At the very least, I think she was in Australia or something. But, they got their little thing going on. I had it. And he started, again, he went off. He'd been up all night drinking. He just went off, throwing shit and, all pissed off, as usual, trying to blame me for something. And I did the thing that you see people do on TV where, you're trying to capture someone's attention because they're just going crazy, and I slapped him in the face. Not like a full-on slap, just, enough to try to grab his attention. No hesitation. And he just right across the face. Not a fist, but still, he wasn't as good in shape as he used to be, but he was still a strong guy. And, yeah. I think that's why I have a bad neck now. Had a little whiplash going on. My ears were ringing. And I was freaked. I took the kids, and we left. And fortunately, I had to leave my dog there. Eventually, we went back, and, it was always after something like this that he was so sorry and how much he loves me, and I'm so wonderful. Of course, I never heard about any of that until something like that happened. I never heard I was beautiful. I was never heard, how wonderful a person was. I never heard any of that stuff until something like that happened. I don't know. I guess things just went on from there. Nothing new.
So, in the middle of this, is there any way, what would be your best advice with a veteran spouse that might be struggling through suicide?
At the very least, go get help for yourself. The old saying, you can't lead a horse to water.
Yeah.
Or you can lead a horse to water, because there was no way. I even tried to get him to go back to talking to the priest again that we went to see, and he would have none of it. He wanted nothing to do with feeling better in any way, shape, or form. And I would say to any veteran spouse, go get help for yourself. Don't sit and think that, it's like with anybody who's abusive in any way, they're not going to change. At least
Not without a lot of help.
Right,
And
not without a lot of help. Not by you hoping